calling all beings on a Saturday evening. I'm your host, DJ, along with the legendary researcher and OG member of CAB, a study of UAPs, Deb. What's up, homegirl?
About to get serious up in here. Gonna do some serious talk.
We don't know if she's wearing either the Crip or blood colors today, but awesome, man. Thank you, Deb. And also, one of our new cabbies and a brilliant addition to the show is the host of Bigfoot Crossroads, Matt Knapp. What's up, gangster?
What's up, G-Money?
Not much, man. I just watched Reservation Dogs on Hulu. I recommend everybody that has Hulu or has access watch Reservation Dogs. It is absolutely brilliant. It's a satirical look that also is quite serious about life on the res. I know you have grown up around and have interacted with people that live on a res. A lot of us have not. And so, yeah, I recommend everyone check that out. So Deb, Matt, I talked to our friend the other day, Christopher Sharp, and wanted to just kind of get the latest. He's done outstanding reporting. He's been mentioned on a couple different shows, Micah Hank's show and others, for the great work that he's done and the faith that he's kept that this was going to happen, and by golly, it did. And when I spoke to him, he mentioned a name that somebody that I know that I've spoken with, a military brother from the Marine Corps who finished his law degree not too long ago, somebody that we've got, Deb, you and I have met, and somebody that we both admire, and that is Sean Munger, who goes by Bob Plisken on Twitter. So Chris said, we got to have on Bob Plisken with me, Sean. And I said, yeah, cool. I will reach out straight away and make that happen, sir. Yes, I'll even do the British salute for you. So without further ado, my friends, let's bring in the editor and creator of Liberation Times, the UK brother. He is at Chris UK Sharp. I got to have dinner with this man, not once, but twice in England, baby. Put your hands together for Chris Sharp. Where is it? Oh, I got to add him. I can't only clap. I actually have to add him to the stream. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Nathan. By the way, so those of you who are wondering, Nathan is off with the fam tonight. And actually, I think he's actually meeting with Dan from the Signal from UK UAP Media and EXO tonight. So it's going to be pretty cool. Now, look at Matt. He made a new avatar. I love it. He's very creative, Matt is. So our next guest, my Marine Corps brother from another, representing the state of Mass, baby. Don't play no games. Boston strong. Like I said, he done got his law degree. He's somebody that we admire and respect, and he was a contributor. He is a contributor to the debrief and was a contributor on this story that potentially is going to change lives. So without further ado, put those hands together. Get the Cheeto dust off of there and put them together for Sean Bob Plisken Munger.
Going on? Good evening, all. Good evening, all. And across the pond, how you doing, Chris?
Good to see you, Sean. Well done, by the way, with the debrief stuff. It was incredible, and Sean's been such an important part to what I've done with Liberation Times. I mean, his feedback when I initially started publication and doing articles, it literally made all the difference. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for Sean, and he's just the best, man. So thank you. I'm humbled to be with you, so thank you.
I appreciate that, Chris. I'm just here to serve, and if I can add value, I have the time and the capacity to do so. I've always let that be known that if I can, I will. If I can't, I'll try to point you in the right direction to somebody else that can. So,
thank you.
Just because we're not done throwing accolades at Sean, before I knew him, I had become friends with and started having phone conversations with Richard Butt, whom everybody knows and has been invaluable to the community as well. And he said, dude, he said, "Do you know Bob Plisken?" And he said, "Bob Plisken has basically done X, Y, Z. He's former Marine. You need to connect with Bob Plisken." And I said, "Yes, sir, I will." And I reached out to Sean, and we started having text and so forth. And then I had the pleasure of meeting him, and hopefully, if everything goes well in October, when I go to my college team reunion in Mass, maybe I'll get to see him. So hopefully all that will come together. But y'all didn't come to hear about all that, right? They want to hear about UFOs. So I think a good place to start, Deb and Matt, I'm thinking is to let Chris give us an update on what he's the latest. And I think the fact of the DOD complaint, which may or may not have been formalized into an IG complaint, but certainly was causal in the retribution that begat the second complaint that was formalized with an attorney. So, Christopher, without further ado, take it away, and then we'll make our way around the table with.
Absolutely. So, firstly, this is a really serious deal, what we're talking about. So, I don't want to put anything out there that shouldn't be put out there, but I will say questions should be asked. So, when last week David Grusch's intelligence community Inspector General complaint was released in its unclassified form, it reads, in July 2021, Mr. Grusch confidentially provided UAP-related classified information to the DoD Inspector General. At that time, Mr. Grusch communicated classified information about the improper withholding and or concealment of classified material from the US Congress by certain IC elements, so intelligence community elements. Mr. Grusch believes that his identity and the fact of his UAP-related communications with the DoD IG have been disclosed to individuals and or entities outside of the DoD IG, and that he has suffered retaliation and reprisals related thereto. So what seems to have happened is that Mr. Grusch has communicated information relating to UAP programs that have been hidden from the oversight of Congress. He's communicated that information to the DoD IG, and then somehow that information has got out in terms of knowledge of that information that was provided. And that has led to the harassment and intimidation and whatnot of David, which is why he has gone to the intelligence community IG to launch a complaint about that harassment and intimidation. So, I mean, David says that he's making no accusation at all that, he's implicating the DoD IG with leaking any information. So that's something, that needs to be set straight. So he's not making any accusations or anything like that. But it does leave questions. Where did that information leak from? And we don't know for sure that it didn't leak from the DoD IG. So one would suspect that there would be some internal investigation, perhaps, just to make sure that it didn't. Look, it could have leaked from other individuals that knew David. Who knows? We just don't know. It's conjecture. I feel it's a serious enough deal, unless it's been resolved 100%, that this did not leak from the DoD IG, because there's a lot of whistleblowers out there, and it's not just UAP related in terms of the Department of Defense. And confidentiality is really, really key in terms of any complaints or information that they're providing to the DoD IG. So I feel if there is some question, if there's even a little shred of doubt, hanging over the DoD IG, I think that's a really serious deal.
Do we? I want to let everybody just have a shot at that, but do we know? Do we know that he spoke with the DoD IG, either formally or informally? Have you been able to confirm that?
I can only go by what's in the actual complaint to the IG.
And so, that's in there. Okay.
Yeah. So,
wow.
So he said that he feels that his identity and the fact of his UAP-related communications with the DOD IG have been disclosed to individuals and entities outside of the DOD IG, and that he has suffered retaliation reprisals related thereto. So I say intimidation and harassment. I need to get my language corrected just to be fully accurate. Retaliation, reprisals.
They're synonymous,
So,
though. They're synonymous, you know. Sean,
I know.
Do you have anything on that?
Yeah, I believe some of the media organizations may have had a copy or potentially have had eyes on some of the unclassified portions of the Inspector General complaint, and that could potentially be an avenue of how, if anything's been leaked. Again, I'm not sure. I might not have been fully up to speed on what has come up. If there is that something was leaked, it could either come from the DOD, it could have come from some of the legal counsels that have copies of these things, and it could have come from potentially some of the media organizations that have been provided a copy, if those are out there. It's the internet nowadays. Once it goes on the internet, or unsecure network, it can slowly leak and slowly work its way out. So it wouldn't surprise me if it came from any one of those positions.
Before I pass it over to Debs, no, I understand, and that is critical. I mean, and that I'm going to get into that because we're going to talk about one IG potentially investigating another, and Title 50 authority versus Title 10 authority. But I want to say hello to Beyond the Binary. Hello, Jules, in the chat. Thank you for being here, ma'am. And Deanna, I hear what you're saying. Others may be waiting to speak depending on how this turns out, is what she's saying. And in fact, we have been told that there are others. I don't want to go ahead.
Well, yeah, I would even say just from what Mr. Grusch has put out forth, either through the debrief article and follow-up interviews, is that named individuals have come forward. So here I am telling everyone, but these witnesses came to us, came to me in an official capacity. So that's named individuals that follow-up investigators can now just go to and get what they reported. So if he's repeating information that might be hearsay because the declarant is the original witness, then the investigator can go to that person who's a known individual that works for a known organization that has access to a known compartment and investigate further if that information's true. Now, I would say, if the Inspector General complaint is about retaliation, okay, that could still be the vehicle that follow-on investigations can occur, because now you have congressional committees. Their general counsel have multiple committees, multiple general counsels of multiple committees have taken Mr. Grusch's deposition. So now those organizations, not necessarily the elected officials, because they have to have separation. You don't want the elected officials to have any access, because you don't want political influence on an active investigation, because that could screw up anything down the road should there be prosecutions later on. That defense attorney could say, is this an impartial investigation? Or were you going in after him because the senator or the future president, is on that committee and they wanted you to do a political favor? So you don't want those politicians involved at this time. You don't want them making comment. At least I wouldn't. Again, as an attorney, I wouldn't want them making comment right now. Let the investigation go, and when the information is known, or there's more corroborating information that's or substantiating evidence that's in hand, then maybe start coming out a little bit more. So I mean, be a little reservation from the the politicians. I'm not really worried about. But back to the investigation of the reprisals. So if he's already given a deposition, so now you have the counsel for those committees, and congressional committees have the authority to have investigations. So other investigations can spur from this, I was retaliated against. Well, why are you retaliated against? Oh, because, again, so this is not this situation. Here's a hypothetical. I was retaliated against because I was sexually harassed. Oh, I was also raped, and then it's like, oh, now we have a, sexual assault investigation that spurs on the original Inspector General. So this, and I see it often, like, oh, the complaint is about reprisals. It's like, that doesn't matter. And that's just, okay, now the information is getting to the people that need to hear it, and more can come from it. So this is the spark that leads to the fire that burns down the house. Okay, so this is the, another brick in the yellow brick road. Okay, this is what needs to happen, and it needs to occur in the correct way, in by everything that I can see, the ways that he's conducting it, and through counsel and through the investigative government bodies, is that he's doing it, trying to do it on the up and up, right? So it doesn't get shut down. Or sorry, it gives the government the opportunity and the existing infrastructure the opportunity to either uncover it, and if not, then you can always go the other way.
And where the investigation starts is not necessarily where it ends. It opens the door, I think, is what you were saying. And all Pink Floyd fans are upset that you didn't say it's just another brick in the wall, right, Chris? With that, but in answer to the question earlier posed by Deanna, what you're saying is the answer is yes. There are more people have come forward. You have spoken with more people. So it's just a matter of them, I guess, coming public. I think that's the discriminator. But before I speak any longer, we got to get Debs and Matt in here. So, Debs, would you like to react to what you've heard thus far?
Yeah, so of course, the fact that Greer was putting David Grusch on a lineup for his conference last weekend has sort of highlighted the possibility that Greer might be somehow involved with some of the information leaking. He also allegedly claimed to provide information to David Grusch and try to associate his name with him. So can you guys comment on that?
Well, yeah, okay. All right, go ahead, and then we'll get Matt in there.
I personally I prefer not to speculate on somebody else's actions at that point. I'm not versed on it enough.
Chris, would you want to react to it?
Again, I have no information in terms of any contact potentially made between Stephen Greer and David Grusch. All I would mention is, this story and, David Grush's name, for instance, they did leak out before the story came out, which put David in a really, really difficult position and meant that the article had to be released sooner than it may have done otherwise, to protect him. So we know that this whole process, to a certain extent, has been leaky anyhow. But I wouldn't want to speculate in terms of where the information leaked from. As Sean said, that there's various individuals and organizations where this could have leaked from. I think this is one part of the picture in terms of any investigation done by the ICIG is to find out where that did potentially leak from. But otherwise, I mean, Sean hit upon some really interesting things there. From my understanding, David has provided verifiable information to Congress. So, I mean, I think that skeptics and people who do believe the whistleblowers should all just rally around now to say, okay, cool. If you don't believe it, you shouldn't have a problem. Just verify. He's provided the verifiable information. Now go and check it out. Prove it. That it stops there. Let's stop this all. If you think this is some kind of psyop or anything like that, cool. It stops here. Verifiable information has been provided. Now let's go and check that out. You should have no problem with that. If you think that it's all a lie, that's fine. Just check it out. You've got nothing to lose. And I think this is the stage of where we're at now. I would also note, from my understanding as well, I think it was Michael Schellenberger who does the public Substack. From my understanding, he has actually spoken to some of the other whistleblowers who've had contact with the actual programs directly, who may have seen a touch to craft and stuff like that. Although they're not named, they're still anonymous at this point. He has had contact with them, and these individuals do exist. And when people say that David is just getting secondhand information and whatnot, these people do exist. People have spoken to them. I mean, whether they choose to go public, that's to their discretion, but they do exist. So I think that's very, very important to actually to actually get out there in terms of where we are in this story at the moment. But yeah, I think something else I'd point out as well, if locations have been provided in terms of this verifiable information, I think it's very, very important to kind of like verify it as soon as possible, because if these programs are being moved to different locations to hide what they're doing, then time is of the essence in that respect, if that is correct.
I was going to save this for later before I pass it over to Matt. I was going to save this for later, but what I want to say is that belief is something that we have to discuss, because if your standard is going to be, unless I physically see it, touch it, that's going to be proof to me, then they're never going to meet your standard, because I can guarantee you that 50% or better of the UFO Twitter community, if someone from the government came out and said, okay, these are photos of it right here today, people would say, I still don't believe it, or video, or they'd say that looks fake, because Christopher, we know that there are some UAP videos that have come from Jeremy that are real, that have been, that they do not know what those are, and people say it's fake, or it's not what. So if the standard is going to be that you, the individual out there, have to see it, touch it, feel it, have the news cameras go in and go into a hangar and show it to you, that's not happening. So you may as well just resign yourself to, because there's always a certain amount of belief, no matter what it is, whether it's a belief that your 401k is going to be there at the end of your career, that you're going to have Social Security, that when you go to the medical, it's going to be paid for. There's belief in everything, and the individuals that are coming forward is what we'll get into as we progress through the show. Let's go to Matt, and then we'll get Julie's question there. Go ahead, sir.
Just kind of piggybacking off your belief statement. Someone posted the other day in my little circle that no amount of belief makes something factual. And my response to that was, and also, no amount of disbelief makes something not factual. Belief has to be removed. And right now we're living in a climate, due to various reasons, that belief is kind of playing into acceptance, where, for instance, touching the UFO, if you let somebody, a disbeliever in there, there's some people who even that would still doubt it, because they're not willing to accept what they're being shown. They're not willing to accept that reality. I see memes all the time being posted about, just wait for the staged alien attacks. And there's still people that believe all the UFO stuff being talked about through the government entities is just all fakery and, illusion to keep us, focused over here while they're pulling their shenanigans over here. So it's going to be really interesting as more of this hard proof comes out and factual information, how the public accepts it, and when they decide to set belief aside and just let the evidence that's shown to them sway their opinion one way or the other. Whenever it comes to the leaks, I mean, U.S. government, man, we're a bucket with a bunch of holes in the bottom of it. But one interesting aspect is, if these leaks were responsible for him being threatened or anything of that nature, typically the leaks in government come out due to political influence, being able to sell a story to a paper or, a news agency or whatever. But this is a situation where it sounds like, if all this information is true, that this leak went directly to somebody who didn't want it out, and then went as far as to try and suppress that information.
And can I just say one thing real quick? I want to be clear about the distinction. This is not a leak. This is a report to an official process. an IG process. What Julian Assange or what's the other cat that's over in Russia right now? I can't remember his
Snowden.
name now. Yeah, Snowden.
Reality winner.
Those are leaks where something was given to the media. This was, he went through legal channels and did it the proper way. So that's not a leak. But I understand what you're saying is, what you're thinking, Matt, is they leaked to him, is that the process owners that were surrounding these programs that were working on these craft leaked to David. If that's what you mean, then
No. The information that David took to the DOD IG
is not a leak. Right.
leaked out from the DOD IG in theory. Apparently. But we don't know the chain of custody of the information and who all had access to it previously. But the point is, if it came from some place other than the DOD, if it was just somebody associated in the process saw it and gave that information to somebody, how did it end up in the hands of someone who's now willing to go and threaten him not to release this information and to keep it quiet? It makes it sound even more so like the information that was leaked did come from the DOD and was put in the hands of specifically someone, which means that there's some sort of embedded informant possibly in the system looking for information like this to happen as sort of, a means of compressing and keeping it quiet. And if that's the case, I mean, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, I want to get Chris and Sean's reaction to that. Before that, I just want to take one little shot at belief. Matt himself, a 2-decade plus Bigfoot researcher, has stood and seen Bigfoot in front of him. Okay, I didn't see it, but my knowing Matt, I believe that he saw what he says he saw. I don't have to be there and see it or have been there when he saw it to believe him. There are people who both Matt and I have heard who've said they've seen Bigfoot that we don't believe. And so it's up to every individual out there. But let me get your reaction to that, and then we'll go with Julie's question. What Matt is saying about the internal leak from someone affiliated with the DODIG to those that had agency or had authority over David and threatened him or intimidated him in some way.
So I would say it's not clear at the moment. I mean, it's all conjecture at the moment, speculation as to where the leak actually came from. We don't know for sure if it was the DODIG. However, we just don't know. And as I said, if there are questions, even if there's like 1% doubt, in terms of you being able to provide the DODIG information, and that may leak, leading to severe consequences. I think that's very serious. And I have asked questions of the DODIG as to whether they can comment on this and whether they can deny whether the leak did come from them, whether an internal investigation has been undertaken. I've received no response yet. So yeah, there are questions overhanging relating to that. I would also point out as well that David's correspondence with formal correspondence with the DODIG and ICIG came about before the Arrow was formally established. And Patrick actually got in. So those people say, "Oh, why did they go to Arrow?" Basically,
Chris,
there at the time.
Chris, but they were both. But they were both DOD-based organizations. The name is not significant. Both of them were Title 10 DOD organizations, and the fact of the matter is that these programs reside in Title 50 organizations, which, Sean can talk some more about that as well, right? So, and can one investigate the other? I don't know. You may need a third party that involves Congress. Sean can speak to that. But let me get Julie's question here before she decides not to show up for the next chat. Sean, would you take this one? This is our chat monitor, Julie. I'll read it out loud. Does anyone besides me think it may have been internally and intentionally leaked to force the story out for the protection of Grusch?
I mean, again, that would be any answer. This would be potentially, it'd be absolute speculation. I mean, depending on what results of it, were they intentional or that's a great question. I mean, that's a question that you'd have to sit there and ponder when you start seeing reactions of whatever the leak is, and that's something that might come later on. Is okay, leak comes out, certain aspects of whatever comes out highlights certain things, or either establishes credibility or diminishes it, and then okay, who benefits from that? So, but then again, it could also be just, especially with this community, it could be somebody that just got it and then wants to look cool and just gives it to somebody else and wants to, establish their own credibility. So it could be either, malicious intent or just stupidity from someone that just doesn't know how to keep their ship tight.
Yeah, and Jules, at this point, I'm going to take it at face value based on something that I'm going to get in here at the moment. And then if there's reason to think that conspiratorially about it, we could shift gears to that. But at this point, I'm going to take what's been said at face value because of the vetting that's been done by the individual. So I'm going to take it in this direction. Then we're going to go, Deb, Matt, Chris, and Sean. But a question that people may be asking is, why should I believe or trust David Grusch and what he says? Why should I believe him? So we can go with the very simple New York street answer, which is, and Sean might call this a Boston street answer, is that this man has skin in the game. Okay, first of all, in investigating these complaints, and by the way, I just heard on a show that's a very respected show and host who was basically questioning. First, they played some clips of a very famous debunker in the community, and then postulated, what if David was shown human-made craft, and he's the fool on this, and he's reporting it, but they just show him stuff that we made. Was the paraphrasing of his statement. And I say he spent 4 years, he said, investigating this, going through. Not one person, he said in his interview with Ross. I interviewed people that were part of these programs that didn't know one another and got the same information from multiple sources. And so he took a good long time investigating this before he came forward and made the statements and the allegations and the illegalities were brought to light. The second part is, we talked about skin in the game. So we have an individual who was an Air Force reservist, so not full-time, but an Air Force reservist who got hired in by the government and got himself at a very young age into a GS-15 position, which in the general schedule, you can look up their salary. It's as high as you can go in general schedule. He may have gone on to become an SES, a senior executive service person. Eventually, like I said, he's quite young, 14 years in. And he was doing, I believe, reserves and government. And we all know it's, 2 weeks, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, et cetera, plus your deployments in there. He gave up a GS-15 salary and the compounding associated retirement. He gave up his commission. He relinquished his commission with the Air Force Reserves over this. I don't know that he's going to get a retirement out of that if he didn't have 20, and apparently he did not. That is skin in the game. That's not just a mouth on Twitter that's talking and saying, I think this and I think that, and you have to do this and show me that. That's someone that spent 4 years investigating it, brought it through the legal chain of authority, and gave up his security over this topic. I can tell you, this kid right here, if I had that opportunity, would not do that. And I'm not just saying that to my friends. I'm saying it to you. And I love disclosure. I really believe in it. But that's somebody, not to the degree that that is self-sacrifice. There are two people that fall in this category. Can anybody name them? Luis Elizondo and David Grusch. They both gave up GS-15 positions over this topic. Luis has his military retirement. David Grusch gave up his Air Force Reserve commission over this as an officer in the U.S. Air Force Reserves. Right. So that is skin in the game right there. So Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say so. If you're going to look at the witness coming forward, you would look for, I guess, one bias. Was the individual bias, and is their bias influencing them? So I guess I'll attack that one first. So as what I know about Mr. Grusch is that he's a 14-year intelligence officer, right? He served in an official capacity on the UAP task force for approximately 4 years, or the follow-up agency, right? He first came on from the NRO, and then later on from the NGA. So that means he had 10 years as an intelligence analyst or intelligence officer or in intelligence capacity of being a serious person during, Operation, Iraqi Freedom, Enduring Freedom, War on Terrorism. We were tracking down, and this is, again, I don't know if his time might have overlapped mine. If I look at a calendar, I might have been out already. But we were tracking down and killing people. That's what our profession was. I'm just go straight to it. And we were good at it, and we took it very seriously. Find somebody that's trying to hurt U.S. interests in foreign countries, they're trying to kill Americans, and track them down and either disrupt their operation or remove them from this earth. And that's what we did. And a person that served in his roles did that. It's a very serious person. He didn't seek out UFOs. UFO or this UAP task force sought him out.
So I found him.
He was brought into the UAP task force first from the National Reconnaissance Office, right? So he came over there.
Subject matter expert, Sean. Subject matter expert.
And then
right.
He remained and ended up being a liaison from the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. So, and now he's a person that is interested in UAP. So bias did not exist prior. So now let's look at interest. Does he have an interest to come forward? All right, so you have, if GS-15 in Massachusetts, right, base pay, step one, is $146,000 a year. Highest step is $176,000 a year. Now, that's not including, and in his position, again, without getting into detail, all the other accolades and travel and everything else that is associated with that are on top of that base pay. So people might say, oh, he wants to go on the circuit, talk about UFOs. How much money do you make a year going to Alien Con or writing a book? Like, what do you get, 20 grand from writing a book? Now, the GS and then his government position, there's a pension, there's retirement, and they pay you indefinitely. It's one of the greatest ones that exists in this country, is the federal retirement system. And then thrift savings plan on top of that, where I think they match. It's incredible.
That's right.
Now, to walk away from that, right? Because, again, after 10 years of other experience, 4 years of, again, it might not even been his primary his duty. It might have been his secondary duty. I don't know, this it just doesn't, interest isn't, I don't see it there. So, okay, you walk away from $100,000 a year after you retire in a few years, right? And he's only 36 years old. He's only 36 years old, and he's already a GS.
It's like a kid.
Like it's amazing to me.
Yeah, I mean, the retirement, it's a percentage of your highest 3 years of pay that he would have gotten in his retirement.
Doesn't work out. The math doesn't work out.
Right.
And the people that are attacking his credibility based upon that haven't done the math. The math doesn't exist. And then I would go towards motive. So if I'm going to question a witness that's on the other side of me on the stand, I'm going to look at motive. What's this person's motive? What is his motive of a person that's, he can be a career intelligence person. At this point, it's not a job. He'd already get a job. He already has jobs. He doesn't, coming forward, it's going to limit his job capacity.
He has jeopardized that.
Yeah, he's absolutely jeopardized that. So, yeah, no, it's not there. It doesn't make any sense. So, those three elements where you would look for to impeach a witness, they're weak. They're weak, and they're very thin. So it's incredible. And then the moral for lying. One of his fitness reviews most recently, I wrote down the quote. He's an officer with the strongest possible moral compass. And that's prior to him coming public. So it's not that they had put that in paper to substantiate his claims when he comes out. This was prior. So this is he's already established who he is through his up until now, very promising and very successful career. So for him to walk away from this, until proven otherwise, I'd give him the benefit of the doubt, and that's what I would do. Anybody that's going to make a claim, any person that walks in my door and makes a claim, I'm not going to say that they're unless I can prove they're lying. Certainly not going to. It's probably hard enough. It's hard enough for a witness or somebody to come forward to say this horrible thing happened. I'm not going to make it worse for them. I'm not going to make it worse for them because maybe it's hard to substantiate what they're saying. It's hard to prove what they're saying.
Right.
And they're fighting an uphill battle already. So I'm not going to make it worse for you unless I can prove that you're lying. And then I'm going to burn your fucking house down.
And there's 3 years with a nice cozy cell at the federal penitentiary at Leavenworth,
exactly.
and a $10,000 fine were he to have. So if you're wondering, did he make false statements, knowingly false statements to the ICIG? So
his attorney wouldn't have signed his name to that complaint.
Exactly right.
Knowing that there's any false statements in there, because he's not going to lose his career.
Right.
Being on a TV show on the History Channel is not worth losing these careers. These are highly lucrative, or losing your law license. Filing a frivolous claim knowingly, no way, absolutely not. It's not worth it. It's not worth whatever retainer, even if they are getting a retainer. It's not worth making that little money. You'll make plenty of money down the road. Then you lose your license. He loses all his careers, loses security clearances. Absolutely not. You're already mine.
Industry would not touch. I don't know if industry would touch him right now. I hope they do, because if you don't touch him, you're losing. I mean, he was described to me as one of the most talented intelligence officers that had, through his work in the NRO and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, he possessed a set of talents that were unique to him, that he could, as Sean kind of alluded to earlier, make things go away. That his higher ups were like, "How are you going to do that?" He said, "I have methods to make this threat go away." Right. And so anyway,
you start working on some targeting cells and you get some experience. You 10 years or 14 years experience working on those organizations, you're valuable. You're valuable because you know what assets we have. You know how to put those assets on target. You know how to you have connections in other agencies, so you can put together, some actionable intel, and then, either confirm or deny some things. So you are extremely valuable.
I've
for him to walk out of there, because of this, is detriment to those organizations, and it's self detrimental for him to, take up this challenge to try to push this forward into the public.
To say the very least. Christopher, what do you have on that about do you think that David Grusch was fooled by individuals in these different programs, these SAPs that came to him, alleged came to him with stories? Do you think that he was fooled in some way?
Personally, no. I think Sean's just done more than thorough job there of explaining his credentials, and what interest and motivation he would possibly have, doing this, if there was some other motive. And I just think that's not credible at all. He's testified under oath. He's given his testimony to, from my understanding, the House Intelligence Committee and the Senate Intelligence Committee as well. And that's very, very serious. I mean, we're talking hours here. And he's gone through a lot of, retribution as well. And, I think maybe in the weeks to come, we may learn more about that. But, we're talking serious stuff here. But again, it's not my job to convince you. No. I can provide you the facts as I know them, of what's come out. But as I said before, even if you don't believe him, that's fine. You're welcome to your opinion. But I don't think anyone should question whether you should, he's provided verifiable information. If you're so sure that he's lying, that's fine. You won't have a problem if Congress checks out that verifiable information to see if it's true. So, I mean, as I said, there's only one way to put this to rest. It's actually verifying the information he's actually provided. And I think it all comes down to that. You shouldn't have any problem if you don't believe him, with Congress verifying that information. So that's
Chris,
that's what I'd say. Yeah.
let me change the channel on this a little bit. Let's take it in this direction, and then we're going to go from you to Matt and Deb, and then myself and Sean will go. What do you think is important that people know? I want you to think of, and first of all, before we go any further, let's give a shout out to all the applicable people. Let's shout out to Sean, to Lieutenant Tim McMillan, and Micah Hanks, and the Debrief for all the work they did on this. Let's shout out Leslie and Ralph. Let's shout out the legend Ross Coulthart, who knew him a year ago and was able to put this together and was able to get it on someone else we want to shout out, News Nation. Let's shout out Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, who also knew David a year ago. Apparently, David spent the night and chatted at Jeremy's place where they discussed some of these issues. And they held it close, which is why everybody in the community trusts Jeremy, because he doesn't put out things that he's not supposed to. So there's a whole litany of people there. Everybody is a star in my mind. Christopher Sharp, all these people that contributed to getting this underway. It was a multifaceted team effort. With that, Chris, we'll go to you, and then we'll go anti-clockwise, because I can't say counterclockwise because you're British. We're talking like a MotoGP track now. So what, Chris, do you think people need to know? What is not being talked about enough? What do you think is important that you'd like to highlight to the community right now?
Absolutely. So, again, I think Michael Schellenberger put out a great article about this around a week ago. And the one thing that stuck out to me most was this. He wrote, one military contractor said that in December 2010, a major aerospace corporation tried to work around secrecy by creating a buffer organization to prevent scientists and engineers who lacked top secret clearance from learning where the tech they worked on came from. But the military sharply rejected the proposal. The person said, we would apply science and engineering talent because the aerospace corporation security meant that they were not having as much success as they had hoped for. And so we were proposing to horizontally cut through the stovepipes so there would be very few people interfacing with the aerospace company, and the science and engineering talent wouldn't need to know about the full nature of the tech. So I would say that's very important, because the contractor said that the US government agency rejected that idea, and rather rudely, from my understanding as well. It wasn't very politely. So I would say that I'd keep on hold of that thought and that information, because I think that could play a crucial role in the future. I mean, I've spoken before on podcasts that I think there is another dimension to this. Look, this is a really, really serious deal, because democratic oversight is a fundamental pillar to democracy. And if Congress doesn't have oversight of such programs, and they've not been clearly stated to Congress, then that's really serious. From my understanding, I think in the next Intelligence Authorization Act, there may be language to basically prevent funding of SAPs if they've not clearly been communicated to the Congress. So I think that this is really important. I think that Congress realizes that now. But I would also say that, look, if some technology or some craft was given to, let's say Lockheed Martin or someone back in, the 50s, something like that, where it had a different name back then, but still fundamentally the same organization, then the people working for that organization now, like, they had nothing to do that, given to the people that worked there back in the 50s stuff, so they might want this information out. They may be looking for protections and stuff like that as well, saying that we need more people to work on this because we're not making as much progress. and these people are human beings as well. They're aware of climate change and all these other issues that the Earth is facing at the moment. Maybe they want tech out because it's very, very difficult to get the clearances to work on these programs, and often that means the best talent doesn't actually get to have put their hands on potential technology that we don't understand. A lot of the best professors or scientists and engineers, a lot do drugs and stuff like that, because these are out of the box thinkers. But that doesn't necessarily get you a security clearance. And, it has been suggested that China and Russia have these craft as well. And guess what?
Mm-hmm.
Well, China can definitely keep a secret very, very well. And, they could, potentially get a lot more people studying craft that they have in their possession than the US does with its, compartmentalization and security clearances. So I think this is really, really important. I think, it could be a national security issue for the US, but also I think it could really improve and benefit everyone's lives. And I think also, although you may have a competition right now existing between, China and the US on this potential technology, I feel that kind of, bringing this out could potentially, hopefully, we hope, bring nations together and,
Yes.
make a real change. Because, as I said before, we have nuclear weapons now. The history of humanity has always been conflict, but before, we had spears and swords, and then we went to guns and stuff like that. Cool. But now we've got nukes, so there is a big conflict, that's like, that's everything over. I don't know if that's sustainable currently. So, yeah, I think there are good people out there who do think of the bigger picture as well. We like to think as this like monolithic thing in terms of US government, oh, it's lucky, but no, these things are made out of individuals like you and me, we all have our personalities and stuff. If you go into like an office, Lockheed Martin, you'll have one guy, even these programs, for instance, people, these are people. You could have one
people.
person, he could have been like a peace activist back in the 90s and noughties opposing the Iraq war. You could, you might have some people with faults as well. You can have an alcoholic, you can have a womanizer. All I'm getting across is these are human beings. You can't think of these as monolithic things. So,
hey, Chris,
I think there are motives there to get this out. Definitely.
Chris, I consider myself a peace-loving hippie, and I have 12 deployments, none of which I accomplished anything like what David Grusch did. But I still think of myself as a Woodstock-loving hippie. And the key points, though, there of what you said is that the reasons that he gave were, first of all, illegalities of which he did not detail what they all are, but except for that Congress, it lacks congressional oversight, which is illegal. And then there are other things detailed that we don't know what they are. But I don't know if harassment or intimidation, if he mentioned that. And the other thing was he said humanity's not benefiting. We're not using this, getting all, broader look at this that you alluded to so that we could solve problems like energy, real world problems, propulsion, that maybe doesn't have a greenhouse effect. So there are all, two major issues right there that he thinks potentially could be solved by this tech if the right people were looking at it. Regarding the contracts, they only run, I'd have to go into my acquisition stuff, but they only run like 4 years at a pop. But he also alluded to there's some sole source contracting that's going on, which means that you can't get multiple organizations that have all these different talents. Maybe somebody has MIT grad students and professors that are part of their talent pool, but they didn't get to bid on it because it went sole source. So he has an issue with that. But anyway, let's go around to Matt because we're getting really short on time. I want to get Christopher to bed so that his hair looks this good tomorrow. Matt, what do you think people should know about this? And especially, you're coming from the Bigfoot community, so I really value the way that you might look at this because you're outside the bubble to a degree.
Yeah, a lot of my own research was based in common sense and logic first, and following the evidence, but also as a podcaster dealing with witnesses I talk to witnesses from all different spectrums of life, you know, and the human element, like Christopher's talking about, is something that can't be forgotten in this scenario. David's got a family, you know, he's got friends. The skin in the game goes way out far beyond careers or money or anything like that. So like, I understand why he would do something like this. As far as, you know, his integrity and why people should believe him. Yeah, he's been vetted by the largest vetting machine in the world. And if you couldn't trust him, he wouldn't have had his position, period. He wouldn't have been in the position to find out this information. I also think a big thing to pay attention to, if you came to me, DJ, and said, hey, some things went down back whenever I was in my 20s, I had to take somebody out, this is where the body's buried, and you're trusting me with that information, and I'm not going to tell anybody that you did it or anything, but if I decide at some point, you know, this information has to come out for the greater good, I'm going to give you a heads up, and I'm going to let you know, hey, I'm going to come forward with the information. I just need to let you know. So these other sources of his, I do think that there's very large potential for those sources to come forward in the future, depending on how this plays out. I also think that other government entities around the world are watching the United States to see how it's handled, because they were implicated in having their own departments doing the same thing. This is not restricted to the United States. This is a global thing. And China and Russia, yes, but then there's also Italy. There's also other countries, the UK, that are friendly with the United States, Poland, that are watching the Germany. United States, right, to see how we handle this. And like, if the information, if it comes out that like all this is substantiated, these departments exist, then you might see those doors opening over on the other side of the pond, where they're like, yeah, and here's what our department has found. And I think that might be the key to bringing these people together in these different countries and working together on this as a global phenomenon, and not, you know, keeping those divisions between them.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You're right on the money. Great points. Yeah. And people that say that, the U.S. is controlling this topic, you know, last time I checked, we weren't rolling tanks into Germany or Italy or any of these other countries, Japan, any of these other countries that likely have a program, albeit smaller than ours, that have decided that it's in their interest not to talk about it for whatever that reason is. I can't guess to why that is. I could guess, but it's pure speculation. But they've decided not to speak about it. Matt, just like that guy who saw the Yowie down in Australia and went and reported it, and 2 different law enforcement agencies basically said, will you get the hell out of here? Like, go back to Sydney and get on a plane and go back to New York. And he's like, wait, I just saw Yowie. And they're like, yeah, get out of here. So they've decided it's not in their interest to talk about it for whatever reason. Deb, what do you think people should know? You have been very passionate about disclosure and getting people ready for something that may occur. Deb, you've spoken many times about what David has said, that people need to be prepared for a contact scenario. I'm not saying that's what you want to talk about today, but please, the floor is yours, ma'am.
I think the other part of this is that it, of course, highlights other people who have come before him and lets the government know that others will follow after. I think that he is showing that those others that will follow after have credentials, and that they are being responsible with how they're presenting the information. And they've learned from the previous mistakes that were made by prior whistleblowers, and they're going to dot all the I's and cross all the T's, and they better be getting ready.
Can I get an amen? Hey! Yeah, I want to say, I mean, Richard Doty has basically come out and said the very, very same things that David Grusch said. And while people say that he's a disinformation agent, I think they're missing the point. He was not a disinformation agent to the American people. He was a disinformation agent to his target, which was Bob Benowitz, which he was told and ordered to feed him disinformation because Bob was recording classified information going on at Kirtland that they didn't want people to know. And he said that he was read into these programs. Many of the things that David alluded to, Richard Doty has already said. Obviously, Bob Lazar has already said. I believe both of those guys. That's my own personal. I have my own reasons why. Richard Doty obviously feels really bad about what happened with Bob Benowitz. Expressed that on this program without being asked to, and he expressed it to his family. And that's why there's never been a civil action by his family against Richard Doty, which they could have if they thought that they had a case or if they thought he was culpable. What I think people should know is that for now, if you go down, and I'm going to pass it to Sean after this, if you go down the conspiracy rabbit hole, that everything's a conspiracy, everything's a work, you will never emerge from that rabbit hole to learn anything or believe anything. And if that's the place that you feel safe, that's okay. You be there. It's not for me or anybody in this panel or David Grusch or Ross Coulthart or Jeremy Corbell to convince you, as Christopher said, of anything. It's not our job to convince you of anything. We're telling you what we understand, what we see based on our expertise, based on sources, and based on the likelihood that people are telling the truth. It's one thing to have a TSSCI clearance. Sean's had one. I've had one. Another thing to have TSSCI with multiple polygraphs where they can find out if you're hiding something, they will find it. Trust me. Especially, and he said, when he said, I passed a lot of polygraphs, and that's how I was able. He said I could have been read into any program because of all those polygraphs that he passed, which is not everyone who has a TSSCI does not have a TSSCI poly, as the DOD refers to it. And the Department of Energy may have their own kooky system, or the CIA. I don't know. I'm not familiar with their classification systems and their clearance systems, rather. So the best that we have for now is to take it at face value, what he has said, for all the reasons that Sean listed out. I'm not going to reiterate them, but for now, that's where we are. He's an honest person who did this at great personal loss, and he did it legally, not by leaking anything. He did this by the book, using the processes that were laid out for him after a 4-year investigation. By the way, people that vetted David before coming forward with the story, Ross Coulthart himself, Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Kane independently, Tim and Micah Hanks independently. For all I know, Sean may have also done his. I spoke to somebody who is very friendly, has a friendly professional and personal relationship with him. Not that I'm nobody, but I mean, News Now probably did their own thing through their sources. So there's at least 4 to 5 levels that you would care about of people that vetted this gentleman. Not to mention the person I said, look, flag officers vet this guy, not me. That's how good he was. So anyway, that's why I think you should just take the information at face value. I'm not telling you to believe it, but I'm trying to tell you that the man is credible and he put his money where his mouth is. Sean.
I guess I would try to look at, so I try to do in my analysis, I do micro and then macro as well. Just zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, and zoom out. So that way you're not always, you don't end up having tunnel vision.
You're a sensor operator. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
So I end up with Mr. Grusch, the latest person to come forward. And I say latest because let's start with Lou Elizondo. Let's go to Lou Elizondo. So, director of ATIP, but when he was brought into ATIP, and he's mentioned this a couple times, when they asked, so what do you think about UFOs? He goes, I don't think about UFOs. He's a career counterintelligence officer, right? So, and I personally know people that have done interrogations with him, either people I've deployed with or other, right? Multiple people that have gone on for their own career. And when he first came out, I went straight to them, right to them. You know this person? Oh, you do? How do you know them? And I sat down with people that I know personally that I've deployed with, and there's people that are even closer than that to know who this is. But here you have an individual that does not think about UFOs, gets put in a position because they need a counterintelligence person there or whatever position that he had, and then now he's made it part of his life journey that this needs to be addressed. So that's person one. Person two, Jay Stratton, a career intelligence person from like the DIA or his own career path, right? Gets put in this position, and now is public, has a public persona on this topic. Still has a career going on. So does Lou Elizondo in the field or peripheral of the fields that they have, or whatever their expertise that they've gathered over the years. So they're both working in their regular, but they're also vocal proponent people that are making sure or trying to influence for this topic to move forward and have more transparency. So that's number two. Number three, you have Mr. Grusch now that's come forward. So now this is an individual, again, that has his own career path at different agencies. First the Air Force, then the NRO, and then the NGA. And then he worked in this as it was exposed to the information that's available in the classified realm, and has come across things at his own agencies. It's my speculation, okay? Knowing from what I know from my time as an intelligence analyst, the things that I came across is that came across other things, right? And now he's a proponent of this topic, and he's trying to push it, and actually left a lucrative career in the intelligence field where he could have had his real estate business on the side, making $170,000 a year, private jets, traveling everywhere, nice, quiet, behind the scenes person with a great pension and a great retirement. Has left all of that because, according to him, is his mission to move this forward. Because, you can have, classified parts just like our nuclear weapons program and nuclear program, but have open program where it's academics can see it, and we can move our science forward. So that's number three. I guess number four that we really haven't talked about, or there's probably other ones, but retired Colonel Carl Nell, who came forward, who was an Army liaison. So you have an Army liaison now, and I guess we only have one quote in the debrief article, is that he had said that what Mr. Grusch has basically said was fundamentally correct. So from his own perspective as an Army liaison of the UAP task force, is that from his own experience, that what Grusch is saying was fundamentally correct. So now you have four, so there's maybe no fire yet, but there is smoke every day. It is billowing out of that house, okay? And you can either ignore it still, or again, I'm inviting the people to just be quietly agnostic and just sit back and allow these people to let the processes that they've initiated work its way out. Because attacking their credibility or having something, his mannerisms, he looked left, he looked... What are you doing to this person?
Fruitless.
What are you doing to this person? They don't deserve that. They don't deserve that. Wait till they actually do something that's false or wrong. Don't try to interject or speculate. You're not doing anybody any favors. You're not doing society any favors. Just let the process go out. If the Inspector General comes out and says that these claims are unsubstantiated, or congressional committees, if those come out and say that we don't believe this person because of X, Y, and Z, let's track those down too. Let's see if those facts are have evidence behind them, and then go from there. But to put a person on this that I'm looking at him through a 20-minute interview. And,
I took a class in this, man, in mannerisms.
Give me a break. I wouldn't put that in front of a jury. You're out of your fucking mind.
Sean, I went to Framingham Community College and took a class in mannerisms. I'm just kidding.
No.
So, body language, Holmes.
So you have four career people with different career paths that came across this organization, came across the evidence that exists, or the the gaps in information, and all they're saying is, let's track this shit down. All Grusch is saying is that these people that claim that work in these programs are saying that this is happening. Track it down. That's it.
He said, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, please. I told him you gave him the information I had. He has my number. He hasn't called me. Basically, he said he could go down the exact same routes that I went, but when David went to go down those routes and asked for access and was denied is when the trouble started. And Sean Kirkpatrick's probably looking and going, you know what? I went on the GRB calculator, my retirement with the government's looking really good, and I don't want to screw this up. So, Christopher, so what I want to do is I'm going to get a parting shot from you and then go with Cabby goodbyes. And for Matt, I was going to say, there's smoke. We don't have the fire yet, Matt. It's like we've seen the footprints, Bigfoot's prints, and we have the Foster's lager can size feces, but we haven't just seen the fur yet. So anyway, go ahead, Christopher.
No. I think it's been so insightful having this podcast, and I've learned something from you all this evening. So thank you very much. I think, as Sean said, I think we should just see how the process unfolds. I think you're going to see new intelligence authorization Act draft language come out, in addition to National Defense Authorization Act language come out. I think that should be very, very interesting, I think. And also, there's the oversight, House Oversight Committee as well, which may hold a public hearing relating to UAP. Let's see who we get. I mean, is Dave going to go and testify before that committee? If so, that'd be very, very interesting indeed. I mean, from my understanding, there may be other committee hearings as well. I'm not certain they will occur before the summer recess. And I can only say that it's the intent of certain members of other committees, let's say, within the Congress to hold hearings. I don't know if they will definitely happen, but I said there's definitely some intent to hold further hearings and go further than the Oversight Committee of the House. So I think that'd be really interesting. And I think there's some really, really good, excellent journalists looking into this deeper now. And I think if they dig in all the correct holes, I think that they'll find a lot of interesting stuff to report on. It's going to be a very, very interesting process. And I think for those who complained previously that this whole process has been so slow, I think it's definitely going to accelerate now.
I was one.
Way.
And Chris is like, no, DJ, it's going to happen. And I was like, yeah, okay, Chris. And then it happened. You're right on the money, Chris. You're right on the money. And by the way, before I get in trouble, one of my teammates from Dean is the deputy police chief of Framingham, so I wasn't trying to make light of Framingham Community College. And it's so cool. We have someone here from New England on my right and then Old England on my left, so it's great. All the same town names. All right, let's go with Cabby goodbyes. Matt.
I don't even know what to say to that comment that you just made.
No, I mean, I was trying to allude to, I was thinking of the Pennsylvania researcher that said, I found the feces and it looked like the size of Foster's lager cans, but human-shaped feces.
Australian for beer.
Go ahead, brother.
No offense to any Australians listening. I know my accent impersonation is horrible. Yeah, man. This isn't just a story. It's the very tip of a very huge iceberg. There's a body of evidence that the public isn't privy to. He's making a claim, but he's also saying, and here's how I reached this point, and go investigate it for yourself and see if you reach the same point. It's going to be a very thorough process. We've designed it that way. He handled it the right way. And by coming forward and letting everybody in the world know, hey, I've filed this complaint, the gears are in motion, They can't suppress it now. They have to come forward with something at some point. They have to reach a decision and let people know about it. And I think that's huge for disclosure. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, learned a lot of information. Sean and Christopher, wow. DJ has kept you a secret from me this whole time. I'm glad the cats are out of the bag now. You guys are amazing. Thank you for everything you've done, and keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Hey, can I get an amen? Yeah, this is potentially the biggest story of all time, and people are wondering about the Real Housewives of New Jersey and what's happening with Frank and Teresa and blah, blah, blah. It's amazing. And pass the salt, by the way. Yeah, great. There's UFOs. This is potentially if go back and listen to the uncut version of that somebody, I think, Techno Poodle put on YouTube. It is the uncut Ross Coulthard interview where there's no commercials. It is, even for people, everybody on this panel except Matt has heard every one of these hypotheses pretty much that was laid out, I think, save for one. And it's still shocking. It really is just mind-blowing, because we have a guy who also, we didn't even mention, he has a degree in physics. Essentially, he's a physicist that's an intel guy that's analyzing the fourth and fifth dimension and the potentiality of this being in a co-located physical space that's able to enter into our space when it wants to, and football size, field size craft. So there's so much there. Watch it. And it's just, and it's stuff that we've all heard. We've heard this hypothesized in the community, but we've never had it verified by this high of a source ever. That's what makes it a big story. Deb, if you first of all, Julie is saying there's a question from Grant. I don't know if that's Grant Lavac. If you have a question, Julie, just pose it before we close, and we'll get it in there. Deb, go with your cabbie goodbye if you would, ma'am. Or unless you have something else.
Yeah, I have a few things. One, I need to defend reality TV because it makes great background while you're researching UFOs. I use it all the time as background. Second of all, for all those cabbies who have been long-time listeners, get those seatbelts, because we really are going to be in for a bumpy ride. We need to really be thinking about how people are handling some of these drops. I think it was smart to do the drip method, because you saw how it just, people just get riled up. Like, that's the nicest way to put it within the community. So be gentle with each other, as Kelly Chase said recently. Please try to be gentle with each other. And then, of course, thank you both for coming. It's Liberation Times, by the way, Matt, that you need to go check out. And thank you, Sean, for being here. Also, you guys are awesome. Thank you.
Okay, let me get to. I agree with what Deb just said. I want to answer Grant Lavac's question. Yeah, Grant, you and I will talk. So, what do we make about the UK and Australia's reluctance to comment on their participation in Five Eyes Forum when UK and New Zealand have been forthcoming? P.S. Please consider unblocking me. Yeah, all right. Well, all right, Grant. Yeah, I'll call you, brother. We can unblock it. It's not an issue. Okay. So I don't know if you guys want to take a stab at that, starting with Sean, about what do you make of the UK and Australia's reluctance to comment on their participation in the Five Eyes Forum?
Possibly at this point, there's probably not a joint. I would assume that there's not a joint public affairs kind of policy of, okay, this question receives this answer, this question receives that answer. It hasn't been, formulated. The last thing they want to do is make a statement that contradicts another ally nation at this point. I would assume that would be my perspective at this point. So no comment versus a comment that potentially, goes a little further or contradicts what another nation's going to put out. So don't put out anything at this point.
I would say, from my perspective, I actually said this earlier in the program, Grant. All of these nations have a program, and they have decided that it is in their interest not to talk about it. I cannot speculate for you on why that is, because it would be nothing more than that. The UK and Australia, as you said, they're part of Five Eyes. We share intel with them. Can't really.
Commonwealth nations historically are not as transparent with putting information out and have a little more control over their media organization. So the United States kind of has no choice because media has a little more, ability to push the threshold and demand answers from. Historically, I believe that the Commonwealth nations don't necessarily have those types of media freedoms.
Yeah, we're, and I'm going to go to you right now, Chris. We're a rebellious country, but Grant, there's no way we could know why that the UK and the Australian government see it in their interest not to talk about it. Sean, it could be that is saying from a public affairs perspective, they may not want to step on toes and comment on our disclosure that's happened in our country, but why they're not revealing their programs to you, that's their decision as a sovereign nation not to do that. I couldn't guess why that would be. Christopher?
Yeah, it's a bit over the top, in all honesty, because the question that I put forth to all these nations in terms of their defense contacts is that, can you confirm that you had representation at this UAP briefing that Sean Kirkpatrick confirmed that he held between the Five Eyes? And so far, the New Zealand Defence Force said, yeah, we had someone there. The Canadians said, yeah, we had someone there. The Americans, goes without saying, but the British and Australians, they can't even admit that. I mean, the UK is pretty well locked up. Basically, they say, look, it's our policy that we'll never discuss such matters publicly. So that they've basically got it sewn up already. So they don't need to say to me that, we're going to deny that or no comment or anything. So that's pretty smart of them. I'm still waiting to hear back from the Australians on this. I suspect I'll get a similar answer. But it does, I think, point to quite a major problem in terms of transparency in my own country and also in Australia, that we're not even getting the level of transparency that the Americans are getting on the UAP topic. And, there's lots of people who will criticize the American government for a lack of transparency. And I think, if it's bad in the US, it's even worse in the UK. And I criticize Susan Gough a lot, but, she's been great otherwise. She provides much more information to me than my own government's ever provided to me. And I would also just add this as well. I would suggest, and I would say that some very, very good sources have told me that the Five Eyes are very, very aware of UAP as an issue, and this isn't the first time that the Five Eyes have actually sat down and spoken about this topic. And I think it's something that we should keep an eye on. There are a number of theatres where the Five Eyes allies work together on, and as it's said by Sean Kirkpatrick, UAP is seen all over the world. It's not just restricted to the United States and the coast. So it's a key thing to consider. Yeah, great question.
Yep, that is a great question. Thank you, Grant, for that. And it's very speculative, but I've said that if these other countries had a Lou Elizondo, a Christopher Mellon, if they had now a David Grusch that came out and said, hey, I'm coming forth through an official channel, through some sort of a whistleblower construct that were to exist, if that exists, I'm sure it does in the UK and in Australia, then this topic would, this could happen. The reason that we have this is because we're a rebellious nation. Obviously we were the colonies. I mean, you know what America's all about. We're a very, roughhouse kind of a group. And people came forward and said, this is bull crap, and I'm not taking it, and I'm going to report it. And if you had a David Fravor in your country, or an Alex Dietrich, or a Lou Elizondo, you would get off the ground as well. But the reason that this has come forward is because of those guys. the government does not move from its position just because people on Twitter say, I want to know. They moved because Lou Elizondo and Christopher Mellon and all these people that are going to be known as the forefathers of this movement made them move because they had recency and legitimacy. Does that mean that Rick Doty wasn't legitimate or Philip Corso or others? No, they were legitimate as well. But they don't have the recency and the current day connections and active clearances and so forth that they could come forward and get those videos released. Now, well, shoot, now we got to talk about these videos. So, I mean, that's essentially a large part of it. But the reason it's not happening is those two reasons. A, nobody has come forward and shifted their paradigm so that they have to talk about it. A, and B, those governments that Christopher said he's reached out to, his own, Australia, and, among others, have decided it's not in their interest for whatever reason to talk about it, unfortunately. We would disagree with them, patently, all of us, and our community would disagree with them, but that's their position. Okay. Oh, okay. So there you go. I finished off my own shot. I want to thank you guys. We kept you, nearly 30 minutes longer than we thought, but everybody made a lot of great points. I'm sorry that we did. I apologize to, Chris's wife's asleep, but Sean's isn't, so, and his kids. Thank you so much, Sean. I really appreciate it, brother. I really do.
You. I hope I was able to add some value here, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Oh, man, we can't wait to have you. This was the first time, but it's not going to be the last invitation you get of that, I can assure you. Christopher, you've been on a couple times. You've been on some our roundtables, what is it? What are those shows, the rock and roll shows that we have?
Oh, yeah, the Beatles versus... Yeah, I'm a regular. I'm a veteran of this, so, yeah.
I'm honored.
Friend of the show.
So thank you, everybody in the chat, all you guys, Duncan, Deanne, I see Escape FX, Bob Marley, all you get. Yeah, Deanna. I'm sorry, I said her name wrong. Deanne. I appreciate all you guys. Jules, Grant, and for Matt, for Debs, for Sean, and for Christopher. This is DJ saying peace out. One love. We'll see you down the road. And as always, we wonder what's up around the bend.